name is Kay. I'm the Executive Director of the Eastern Sierra Land Trust. We've got a bunch of folks here today who I'm not sure if you know about the Land Trust and what we do, so I'm just going to say a couple quick words before we turn it over to our soil expert and help us all learn more about that. Eastern Sierra Land Trust works with willing landowners who want to protect their private lands, and we work in Inyo County, Mono County, Alpine County, and Western Nevada. And they do, when we work with the conservation tool, which is our main, the main tool that we use, the land is protected in perpetuity. So that means if it's a cattle ranch or if it's open space, it will always be that way. It'll never be subdivided and turned into a subdivision of, you know, homes of some number. So they do it to protect wildlife, economic, scenic values, tourism, all kinds of things. So if you've got any questions on that, please feel free to reach out to me. I think my information's at the end of the webinar, but you can always find us on the web, Eastern Sierra Land Trust. We also have a program that we call Community Connections Program, and that's our education program. And that is what Marie, our AmeriCorps member, she leads this entire program. And Marie is our second year AmeriCorps member. Unfortunately, her second term ends in September, so we'll be trying to figure out how to have a going away party for Marie somehow in a safe way. So stay tuned if you'd like to be invited to that. And you can look, we'll be doing press releases and it's on our website. We are starting to recruit for next year's AmeriCorps member, so if you're interested, we can send information on that. I also want to thank anybody here today who is a first responder or has family members who are first responders during this challenging and tumultuous time in our world right now. I want to thank you and thank your family member or friend that it is, because it's critical work and often they're not getting the props that they should. I'd also like to thank Katie Quinlan for being with us today. Katie is instrumental in this program. Absolutely, she's key advisor through our local Native Plant Society chapter, Bristlecone. And I just want to make sure she gets props for all the work that she has done to help make this program what it is. So thank you, Katie. And now I'm going to turn it over to Marie, and she'll introduce Julie, who's just simply amazing as well. And we'll go forward. And thanks for writing in your name and where you are in the chat group. And feel free to write your questions there as we go forward. Marie.
Awesome, thanks, Kay. I just want to talk a little bit about our Eastside Pollinator Garden project before we start, because this workshop series is a part of that project. And basically, we work with local community members in Inyo and Mono County to help certify their gardens as pollinator friendly. And basically, what that entails is there's an initial garden visit where I would meet with you and basically go over certification criteria and your plan for your garden. And then there's a series of check-in visits where just to make sure all of the requirements were met, and then you would get a voucher for California Native Plant Society's sale, which is looking a little bit different this year, but we're figuring out it's still gonna happen. And then after that, there would be a final garden visit where you'd get your final certification and get a plaque that shows you have a certified pollinator garden. And real quick, before I turn things over to Julie, I just wanted to thank our donor for this project this year is Metabolic Studios. It's been great to work with them, and also our partners for California Native Plant Society, Inyo Mono Master Gardeners, Eastern Sierra Audubon Society, and all of the amazing guest speakers we've had on this workshop series. Our partner pool has been expanding with everyone that has been involved. It's been great. So Julie is a master composter and soil restoration, habitat restoration expert. And she told me she has an intro she wants to do, so I'm going to keep it short at that and just say that she's had 27 years of experience and turn it over to Julie.
Great, thanks. I'm going to share my screen for my presentation, and I just wanted to, hold on a sec, want to make sure I'm back to page 1. Just give me a sec here. And tell me if you can see this. Can you see the screen? Yes? Good. Okay. So presentation today is called Soil Secrets, Compost and Other Vital Soil Elements for Establishing and Supercharging Your Pollinator Garden. This also applies to vegetable gardens, habitat restoration, and anything you want to grow. A little bit about me is, this is me in the middle when I'm 4 years old. I grew up in upstate New York. My grandparents had a lovely 100-acre farm that we loved. Just little tractor rides. And then I've lived throughout the world. This is me living in Argentina doing flamingo surveys when I was 21 at 12,000 feet elevation and right by the Bolivian border. Master's degree in soil science, and been practicing environmental consulting, biology, soil science for my whole career. And I'm a big cross-country skier. Here's me in Bodie. So if any of you guys are familiar with that, really fun. So this presentation, what we're gonna cover is just some basics of soil fertility, a little science behind that, and then we'll jump into like practical applications, what you can specifically do to really improve your plant establishment and productivity in your pollinator or other garden. And then if we have time at the end, a little bonus on finding what soils you have in your backyard. So that'll be a little hands-on if we have time for it. So there's 3 pillars of soil science. There's the physical aspect of soils, such as sand, silt, clay, like soil texture, aggregates, is there an impermeable layer? You know, soil physics is a practice of a lot of physics. Actually, like if you had an oil spill and you had a certain type of soil, how long would it take to move through the soil profile before it hits the water table? Really complex things. Chemical you're probably most familiar with, which is the nutrients and other chemicals like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, but it also includes salts, which any of you guys are in the Eastern Sierras or in arid lands. That's something a lot of times you have to battle with. And then you have the whole biological, the living components of the soil. And probably the biggest thing you come to mind is worms. Okay, so Marie, do you want to pop up the poll? We have the first poll of the day. See if we get that. So which one of the 3 pillars controls the other 2? And you can hit, you'll see a little button. It'll pop up and you can hit submit, and then we'll see, Marie, we'll see what the answers are here. Marie, let me know when we have, I can't see like how many people have submitted and what the answers might be.
We can't hear you, Marie.
I don't have any yet, but.
Okay.
Oh, I can see it.
Okay, everyone click the button. We get any responses yet? This is interactive.
Yep, we do. We have 4 that say physical,
Okay.
2 chemical, and 6 that say biological.
Okay, we're gonna move on. The answer is biology. So, okay, so let's close that. So soils are really the plant's bank account. The nutrients are extracted from the soil and hold on just a sec, sorry, and need to be extracted from the soil in order to be replaced. So our soil biology are the components that actually goes out and makes it available for nutrients to the plant. So it's super important, and it can also protect against harmful organisms. Okay, so this is just a general wow factor, and some of you may have seen this in the past. Which soil do you think is better, left or right? And you can put your answers in the chat button. What would you rather have in your garden? We're getting a few answers there. Okay, so we're going to move on, and the answer is probably to most people, yes. The difference being is that the left is soils that are managed in an organic way, and the one on the right is done with synthetic fertilizers such as Miracle-Gro. So there's a big difference when you treat your soils right. So a healthy soil will improve your plant production. You can retain nutrients. You allow nutrients to be available when the plant needs it. It can also suppress diseases, decompose toxins, improve water holding capacity, all kinds of, and here soil structure, you can kind of see all these amazing aggregates. So your plant's gonna be a lot happier when it has this soil versus this soil. Okay, so now we're gonna dive into a little bit more about soil biology, and I love Gary Larson, I just had to put that up. Okay, so in 1 square meter, you can see just the incredible amount of soil biology. And so what I want you to take away from this slide is look what's at the bottom. Okay, so this is the biology, fungi, actinomycetes are really the foundation of all other interactions that happens in the soil. So this is really what we're going to talk about today. When you build the right foundation, everything else will come and you'll have a lot healthier soils and your plants ultimately will be super happy. So there's this thing called the soil food web, and some of you might be familiar with it, but it's all the things that happen below ground, starting with organic matter here and your primary consumers, which are bacteria and fungi that decompose the organic matter, and then all the things that kind of eat the fungi and bacteria and then eventually make all these nutrients and other plant available and other positive characteristics of the soil. It's called the soil food web. So we're going to talk a little bit about fungi and bacteria, and I'm going to bring in a little bit of science here. So here's a slide. It talks about how plant succession and plant productivity is influenced by the soil food web. And what I want you to take away from here is you can see at the bottom here, bacterial dominated soils versus fungi. So if you go to say Yosemite, into some of the areas that haven't been disturbed for a long time, you'll see mushrooms growing up. So in that case, that you have a lot more a fungal component of the soil. And then if you look at say Caltrans roadside area they've just scraped, where you're going to see? You're going to see probably a lot of cheatgrass and really early successional plants. And so that has to do a lot with what's going on with bacteria versus fungi. The more disturbance you have, the fungi disappear. And so you go back kind of in early succession. So this is a little bit of geekiness here. So what you're looking at is the fungal to bacterial biomass differences. So let's just look a little bit at a 15-year-old old first stand. You can see the fungi are just like really high levels, and you still have a good amount of bacteria. But when you clear cut that same site, you can see the fungi just kind of disappears, and so does a lot of the bacteria. And so there's a big difference in when the disturbance and relating to these two factors when disturbance happens. And you can see here's like a chemical garden, which are using Roundup, versus a non-chemical garden. You can see there's some differences. And then this next slide really talks about productivity, which it has to do with like how many flowers a plant will have, or how quickly it will establish, or how many bushels per acre it will produce. So you can see, look, for here, this soil here has about 100, yields only 100 bushels per acre, and the productivity compared to the one for the fungi versus and bacteria compared to an agricultural field that has a higher bacteria and fungal counts, this produces almost double the amount of productivity. So say you had a tomato plant, you probably get twice as many tomatoes, And the same is if you're growing, say, cows. So this field has pretty low productivity because of the biomass counts of bacteria versus fungi, versus this one a cow will put on 2 pounds a day versus 1 pound. So you can see there's a big difference in how much the bacteria and fungi in your soil will affect your productivity. So the role of soil biology is they're actually our worker bees for the plants. So they have this great mutual relationship with the microorganisms in the soil. So what happens is a lot of times you have microorganisms hanging out in the soil, and then there's these nutrients out here. And these nutrients are actually not in a form that the plant can use. So they actually give energy to these microorganisms and say, hey, in exchange for carbohydrates, couple granola bars, go find me some extra potassium. So there's this mutualistic relationship, and they also can protect against harmful organisms. Oops, wrong way, sorry. So there's a few destructive practices that are common that I just wanted to go over. So the biggest thing that we find in science that happens is when we till our soils, we actually lose productivity. And you remember in that last slide, a couple slides ago, we talked about how like a forest that's been clear cut. What happens is you destroy your beneficial microbes, and you can lose soil aggregates, and you really want to avoid having bare exposed soils. And then the other thing, as I have to say, I love this Far Side cartoon, is the use of synthetic fertilizers. It definitely gives a plant an immediate boost, and you see, like when you're applying Miracle-Gro, you'll see a big hit, and your plants will start to grow, but it's a one and done. And ultimately what happens is this is a salt, and it pulls water from the plant, and it really kind of affects the microbes. Just like the slugs going to the Great Salt Lake, they don't want to jump into it because it pulls the moisture out of the slug. It's the same thing with our microbes, and it's really not beneficial. And that's going back to that slide showing the different in soil profile, is it doesn't provide anything but a little crack cocaine, I call it, for plants. Just a one and done, maybe 10 to 20% it's used, and the rest just disappears, either volatilizes or goes into the water table. So approaching your soils from a biological approach allows the plant to be in control and work with the soil biology to deliver those nutrients when the plant needs it in the right form. So it's the plants are in control versus you're guessing when the plant needs a little bit more nutrients and which nutrients they need. So the bottom line is that our microbes need a form of carbon to get the energy. So that's really what the next step would be. In just in arid lands, because most of us, I think, live in arid lands, is really under the dry conditions, our soil fungi are the ones that are bringing the water and the nutrients to the plant. So we want to avoid soil disturbance and the use of synthetic fertilizers, because it's really it's counterproductive. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the practicals of what do we need to do to introduce soil biology to restore some of these bacteria and fungal populations. How else can we improve plant establishment and growth rates, reduce our weeding, and strengthens our plants against the pathogens? Okay, so we're going to cover 4 aspects. These are the real practicals: vermicompost, mycorrhizal fungi, compost, and compost tea. Okay, Marie, next poll for everyone. Here's your quiz. What is vermicompost? Is it a form of decomposed rats, fermented wine, worm poop, or an agent that destroys or expels parasitic worms? Can you get the poll up? Oh, we're getting answers.
I can only see the first poll.
Okay, Marie, do you want to try to see if you can get that up?
Second poll should be up. Either that or it's thinking about it.
Sorry, guys. Oh, got it.
Okay.
Here we go.
Get some answers. Okay, there it is.
There it is. Sorry. So now
Okay.
but I don't
Okay,
think.
everyone submit what they think vermicompost is. And Marie, when it comes in,
I can, right now it's 12 to nothing worm poop.
okay, good. Now, Marie, can you see how you can get rid of all that scratching?
I think that's on your computer.
No, I haven't done anything. Okay, we're just gonna move on without it, with it in there. Not too bad. So, okay, so the answer is worm poop. I think it's someone else's screen, Marie, so that might be doing that.
Anyone have any ideas? I don't. I've never seen this happen before.
I think it's someone using their tablet with their finger. You know, they could try to clear it if anyone's using their finger to answer questions. So, okay, we're gonna move on. I apologize for that, but there's nothing I can do. Okay, there we go. There we go. One more. Okay, so worm casting is one of my favorite things. Please mute Lorraine. So what this is a product that you can actually buy commercially that is multifunctional. Not only it adds microorganisms to your soil, but it actually adds organic matter, and it provides nutrients that are in immediate plant available form. And it's, you know, basically this is probably the most bang for the buck you can buy on the market or make yourself. It has 10 times more potassium, 5 times more nitrogen, 3 times more magnesium, 1.5 times more calcium than any other product that I know of. And a lot of the studies have shown that just by adding worm castings, worm poop, to your soil, that it's going to make a big difference. And so if you want to make your own worm castings, and I know several people that do, there's a great book called Worms Eat My Garbage by Mary Appelhoff, Appelhof, and it's available on Amazon on how to set up your own worm bin. And I've done it. It's kind of fun, but sometimes you need a lot of it. So you can buy this commercially. This is a company out of Oroville, the Earthworm Soil Factory, that's actually a composting operation, that when they're done with their compost, they feed the compost to the worms, and then they take the worm castings and they extract it and make compost tea out of it, and then blend it all back together. So unfortunately, it's not available locally, but if you ever go to the west side, you can, like, to Grass Valley area, it is, you can buy it. And so there's others available. They've gotten kind of expensive. It's almost 20 bucks a bag now, but it's like superfood. So this is one of my biggest favorites in terms of improving your soil. The other must-have, and many of you've seen me at the Garden Fest and the Native Plant Sale selling mycorrhizal fungi in these little envelopes. It is probably 90% of all plants on the planet have this symbiotic relationship with this fungi. And what happens is the fungi actually invades the roots, and then the plant actually gives the mycorrhizal fungi energy. So they get the carbohydrates, the energy from the plant. And then they become these little worker bees, and they go out into the soil and gather not only moisture, but nutrients for the plant and bring it back. And these are things that the plant couldn't get on its own. And as a result, the plants have more available to water. Phosphorus is the biggest one, which is really hard for plants to get. It's a really tied up form of nutrients, and phosphorus is really challenging. Copper, calcium, magnesium, and zinc. And also, it's known to kill aphids if you get aphids on some of your flowers, and it improves the host seed germination, so you can use this while you're seeding out, and it does increase resistance to disease. So the nice thing is commercially available. This is screen captured over here, Michael Bloom from Amazon, not that expensive. And the one thing you really want to look at is how many different species of mycorrhizae are in this mix, because there's up to, I think, 23 commercially available. And if you get 23, Paul Stamets has one, it gets pretty expensive. So here's one that I've used in the past. It has 6, and it's pretty useful. I think the only thing that you want to do is stay away from certain plants that don't have the mycorrhizal relationship. And the biggest thing in the Eastern Shore is Atriplex, saltbush. But since many of us don't plant saltbush, we really don't have to worry about it too much. So then the other two really are the compost and the compost tea that I just kind of mentioned in briefly. And it's really the very strong way to replenish your organic matter and your microbes. And there's pros and cons of each. So this is off here to the left is this giant compost turner that comes, this is a commercial of operations in San Diego that makes its own compost actually for mushroom production. And so this runs through it and it turns it. So you have a hot inner core and the outside is cool to it. Once a day they go and turn it. And it's pretty fun to watch. And then, so compost is a concentrated form of organic matter, and it's packed full of the beneficial microbes that are attached to it. And it also has a lot of other nutrients in it. The cons are it's super heavy and it's kind of hard to apply. You kind of need to hire some 20-something-year-old young guy to apply it for you, because this stuff it's labor intensive if any of you guys have ever done this. Now, compost tea, what that is taking all the microbes that are attached to the organic matter and extracting them. And so then you have a concentrated form of microbes in liquid form, and it's super easy to apply. And you can apply it directly to the soil, and you can apply it directly on leaves as well as a form of disease, helping disease to be avoided. So the cons are you're really not adding organic matter to your garden. So if you have a lot of organic matter, compost tea might suffice. But if you don't have, then you might want to start with compost and then supplement with compost tea. So here's me at the Garden Fest a few years ago with my 50-gallon compost tea brewer. And you don't have to make 50 gallons of it, because most people start with just a simple 5-gallon bucket. And this is something you guys can do at home. The ingredients are, you need a bubbler to be able to oxygenate it. So here, this is a aquarium bubbler. And then I have a little hose that goes in and open a valve and it just bubbles away. For a 5-gallon, you can just use a simple stone that goes in a fish tank. We just have to clean it. And then you need your compost and your vermicompost. And then I add foods that help the microbes feed and reproduce. So let's say a bacteria reproduces every 20 minutes. So you want to give it certain ingredients to basically, this is a big breeding machine. That's why they call it a brewer. So you start with maybe 1 million bacteria, and in the end, you might have 10 million after about 24 hours of brewing. And then you simply can apply it to whatever surface you want. This screen capture here down is in the corner here left is Harvard University. And this is how they manage all their lawns now. They've gone 100% organic. A lot of municipalities are now using this. New York City is using it to get away from the chemicals, particularly in public spaces. So it's definitely a trending thing that is a really organic. And you can make it at home. I've made it last year I didn't make it to the Garden Fest, but in the previous years, and then it's been sold at the CNPS Native Plant Sale. So you can also buy it in shelf-stable form, but it just won't be quite as robust. The bacteria and fungi counts won't be as high. So it is available on a shelf-stable form as well. Then we have hot composting, and I think a few of you might have taken my compost class that I had a few years ago with the Paiutes. And so this is really something you can make at home. It's the highest quality compost that you can make, and all the commercial operations, this is how they make it, a hot compost. You make it all in one shot. So it's not like cold composting where you add to it. It's just one and done, but it's super labor intensive. but it's ready the same season you make the pile in. So here's a couple piles, and within, you make it late summer, in the fall you'll be ready to apply it to your gardens. So note here for any of us in bear country, keep your food out of your pile, because so no bananas, no orange peels, no nothing. So the way I make my compost in the bear country is it's all things that a bear wouldn't want. So like horse manure, grass clippings, leaf, straw, and there's no food in my compost pile. If you're in an area where you don't have a lot of pests, then you can add a lot, you can be a lot more flexible in what you make. And then the other form of composting is what I call composting. And this is probably more common because it's a lot less labor intensive. So this is, you add your pile as you add to your pile as you go. But the disadvantage is it takes a long time. You know, so a lot of times it's in colder areas, it's 2 years before you have compost. And many times is, you know, your ready compost is at the bottom. And so you got to dig through it. And, you know, and a lot of times it doesn't kill the weeds because it doesn't get hot enough, and you might have pathogens. So it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. And the other disadvantage is you might get little rodents and other things snuggling up because it's nice and warm, particularly if the temperatures cool off. So that can be a problem that you have to either accept, or you're going to have to kind of bulletproof it. And that makes it's really hard to bulletproof compost piles, because you need to have enough air to circulate around. And if you make it too tight to keep the critters out, and then it will go anaerobic, and you definitely don't want to use a compost that doesn't have any oxygen in it, anaerobic, because that's where all the pathogens happen. So it's just kind of a tricky situation. And so most compost piles need to be situated kind of far away from the house, you know, and you might just have to embrace the thought of, oh, I might have a few little rodents here. And that's going back to hot compost, is your compost pile isn't sitting around for long periods of time. So you just make it with the same summer you're done. Okay, so let's talk about when and how often. So compost is ideally, you should apply it in the fall. Just once you pull up all your weeds and you're putting your garden to bed, is you apply your compost just to the surface. You don't need to till it in, because over the winter, even when it's under 10 feet of snow, that decomposition still does happen. And if you miss that window, then early spring, before things start to come up. Now, compost tea is a little bit different. It is applied because you can apply it both to the soil or to leaves. So, so with trees and shrubs, say you have a fruit tree, and you've got all kinds of things that attack it, particularly leaves. So you'll apply it at first. You'll apply it in liquid form with like a spray applicator, kind of like this, or I have a little backpack unit, or you can go bigger than this. You apply it at first leaf bud, and then once a month for 2 more months. Now, say you've got tomatoes that get leaf rust or get moldy. You apply it at first true leaf, pre-blossom, and post-blossom. And if you have a lot of disease, you can apply it every week. Now, the one thing you want to avoid is applying it directly to the fruit if you can, because depending on how it's made, you just want to make sure it's safe. So I tend to avoid applying it to any, like a tomato or any leaf. But if it's your pollinator garden, you really don't have to worry about it. And so you can just also apply this directly to the soil. And I tell people you can't add too much of it. You just can't. So it's impossible. So when people ask, how much do I need? As much as you possibly can make. You'll be fine. So does it work in your garden? Well, I think so. So this is the Eastern Sierra Land Trust Pollinator Garden. We did, 4 years ago? Something like that. This is what it looked like beforehand. And if ever you've been by, it's just absolutely beautiful. And it does help your plant establish a lot quicker. So, and we all know is when you put your plant in at first, that's when your greatest chance of mortality is. So commercially, like the Christmas tree farmers have discovered this. And traditionally it takes 4 years to bring a Christmas tree to market. And using these techniques, they're now able to bring it to market in 4 years, so almost half. And organic farmers have been using this for a long time to actually reduce their weed needs and to allow for bigger harvests. So it does work, it's out there, it just may be a little bit new to you. So in conclusion of this part is, here's the 4 things that I totally recommend that you use to help improve your soils. The worm castings, AKA vermicasting, so it sounds like all you guys knew about it. The mycorrhizal inoculum, compost, and compost tea. So if we have a few more minutes, Marie, I'd like to kind of jump into this next practical. Do we have enough time to maybe another 5?
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So we're going to talk next about, like, how do I find what soils I have in my backyard? And this is just kind of a practical, and you can dive really deep into this, but I'm going to kind of keep it as simple as possible, so you can play around at your leisure. I know everyone's not in the Eastern Sierras, but I thought I'd put this up. So if you're, say, in the Bishop area, most of the soils, you can either have unbelievably awesome soils or unbelievably terrible soils. So the main 2 types are the mollisols, and you really hope you have these because they're like this organic matter, deep, enriched soil, like it goes 60, 80 centimeters. It's awesome. And a lot of downtown Bishop actually has this. And then they have like the rest of the Eastern Sierras, which are aridosols. So if you live in Chalfont, for example, you probably have this. And these is where you see a lot more of the desert scrubland, which is really low organic matter, water deficient. And then we have all kinds of issues with salts. And so that's really, that's, you're gonna have to work a lot harder to have a great garden if you have these aridosols. So I'm going to show you basically how you find, so if you're like in the market to buy a new house, you can actually, I've done this when I was looked at property. I'm like, okay, what soils are there and how hard do I want to work? So what you'll want to do is, I'm going to switch here in a second to do this live, but if you just go to Google, go to Soil Mapper, and it comes up, this will be the #1 result. You'll see Web Soil Survey Home, and this is the page you're landing on. So I'm going to switch now in a sec here to the live. Okay, so live here. So here we are, okay, live on the same website. So you're just going to click this green button, and it's going to open this new page, okay? And then this map will come up. And what you're going to do, there's different ways you can find your property. So I just use address. And so, Marie, what's the address of the land trust?
250 North Fowler.
North Fowler Road? Fowler
Street. But
let's see if it comes up. Fowler Street, Bishop. Okay, and then hit search. Okay, and there it is. There it is. Okay, so then you see there's the location, and it comes up with this nice aerial. And then what you want to do is you're going to want to hit this button that's called AOI, Area of Interest. And you can either do it a polygon or square. And so you're just going to go with your cursor, and you're going to hit that. Okay, and then it's going to select that area. And then you go up here and hit soil map. Hold on. Sorry. It did not do that. Let's try that again. Let's go. Let's see if there it is, creating AOI. Okay, then it allows you to go to soil map. Then it loads. Okay, and then this is going to tell you, it's going to show up, and here's the property, kind of tell you what your soils are. So 246 is Lucerne Stony Loam, 189 is Dehi Calcareous, and so we're in 184 here. So you simply just click on that button, what you're at, and you can really dive deep into this and get really geeky. You can look at the soil classification. So, but some of the nice things you can just look at is like typical profile. So this is, you got 60 inches of real soil here, and it's fairly flat, your slope, and then your deck depth to restrictive features more than 80 inches. So in a lot of arid soils, actually, you might have this hard pan down at like 10 inches. And so you're going to have a hard time growing it. So you can just kind of look through this profile and it kind of gives you a little bit of information. So here's a little saline meadow. So that might tell me, oh, I've got a little bit of salt going on here. And then this minor component is what else is involved. So this is kind of the simplest way to look at what your soils are. And the nice thing here is look at this farmland classification: prime farmland if irrigated and drained. So I want to have a garden there. So you guys are lucky. You got a good place. And so you wouldn't get this answer if you were in Chalfont. So so I'm going to stop sharing and just kind of going back to my last slide here. Where is it? Here it is. Okay, share. Okay, and then that's the end of my presentation. So I guess we can talk about questions if you might have. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll just go back to looking at the bug shot. So.
Wow, thank you, Julie. That was amazing. There are some questions in chat. I'm just going through. One question from Jenny is, can I use worm castings and I can never say that word, blah, blah, blah. Yes, after my vegetable plants are planted.
So your worm castings, you can add it just to the soil surface, or what we can do for both the mycorrhizae and the worm castings. And sometimes I dig a little trench around the plant and kind of try to not disturb the soil, the roots too much, but kind of dig a trench around the soil and then kind of put it in there. So that'd probably be the best way if your plants are mature. Because the mycorrhizae really does need to have contact with the root system, because that's how they work, because they have to invade the roots. So,
and this question might be more for Katie. Question on when the plant sale might be. Oops, you're on mute. Let me unmute you. Sorry.
So we're working on that right now. I had a meeting before this meeting. What we're going to have to do is it's going to be an online sale. So you'll have to go through the state office, the native plant website, I think. I'm not sure about the details yet. Look at the newsletter that'll come out at the beginning of July. It should have a little bit more details. So the way they work is you have from August, maybe 16th to the 21st to pre-order and pay for your plants, and then on the 24th you would come out and pick them up. What we don't know yet is that the restrictions the research station will put on us on that pickup, people will have to have assigned times, how many people they will actually allow on site at one time. Right now they are super tight, like nobody can be out there except the workers, which is all 4 of us. Yeah, it's very one-on-one. So that's why we don't know, because the rules with the university are changing rapidly. And that'll also be true for the, if you're a pollinator garden grant recipient, they will pre-order their plants and pick them up. We're just working out how that would work with the payment problem, or with the state office and their program.
Okay, and then Katie, maybe, and believe me, I understand what a dynamic situation in our world is. As it settles in, if you want to let us know, we'll make sure we get it on our website too.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll work to get information out to everyone who's a part of this workshop and anyone on our website and everything, if you get it to me.
Julie, do you want me to call out the questions that are on the chat? Did you get a chance to scroll through? Do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead and read them out and I'll respond to them.
Okay. Here's one. How do I understand the classification of the soil?
Well, that's a loaded question because it's a whole, you take a whole university class on soil classification. And so just kind of like in the botany world, there's, you go from broad-based to more specific to more specific, more specific. And so there's like these soil orders, and that's what I talked about, the mollisol versus aridisol. And so going back, and so that Tahini soil, you can actually Google that and it comes up with a whole taxonomic classification. From the big picture, there's some online resources, mainly probably the NRCS, that talks about like soil orders. And from a classification standpoint, you kind of have to learn the nomenclature on how they do it. But with the order, it's like, it's usually there's a abbreviated little three words to tell if it's a mollisol versus aridisol. So it's like an ARD. So that's not an easy question to answer, but there are probably some online resources, or you can take an online class from like NC State or University of Riverside that have soil science programs. But it's a whole semester's worth of interesting facts. Let's just say. Sorry.
And how Harriet wants to know how should I use my leachate?
Okay, so a leachate is usually when you have a worm bin, it's the liquids that come out of it, so it's not actually extracted. Leachate is usually full of enzymes, and so there's beneficial enzymes. So what I would do is you can apply it directly to the soil. It doesn't have as much bang for the buck as say compost tea does, but there is some beneficial. So I just apply it. You can apply it to any of your plants, but I would do it as from the soils right onto the soil.
Great. And then Katie, could you type into the chat group for everybody the website for our local chapter of Native Plant Society? And then this is a great question from Carolyn. Where is a good place to bring someone who is convinced about using Miracle-Gro, a place that uses both organic and non-organic?
So specifically at Carolyn, I know you're in San Diego. There are right in Encinitas. I know this is very specific. Off Encinitas Boulevard, there's actually a farm that has a little kitchen. So my mom became convinced. She was a Miracle-Gro-aholic until I convinced her to do one of her tomato plants using worm castings. And you know what happened? She had like 50% more tomatoes on her plants with the worm castings. So she's now like the gospel according to worm castings. So that sometimes is a good just to have that person or try it themselves, because there's nothing like real on hand, see it for yourself results, and you will see results, because my mom's a big gardener. So that would be my suggestion, is just try it yourself.
Would a plant purchased from somewhere like Home Depot ruin the composition of my soil?
Well, I don't think it will ruin it, but you have to be careful, because they first of all, Home Depot uses a lot of nasty fungicides and other things that you could introduce into your garden. So you may just want to, I tend to avoid Home Depot plants because of that reason, but I don't think it would ruin it. But what you may want to do is just kind of really beef up the area around that pot. So if you're putting it into the ground, just when you dig your hole, add just a ton of compost. If you can get a hold of compost tea, I just would supercharge it right around that plant to help it kind of get used to the bigger, better situation. So, I don't really like Home Depot, I have to admit. So
let's see here. What are the best methods for dealing with hydrophic soils? It makes it hard to irrigate.
Okay, so hydrophobic soils are ones that don't accept water very well. I forget where you're at. But usually adding organic matter actually helps the water absorption. And if you're in an arid area, or you're like in Chalfont, that can help a lot. And you might also try humic acid, which is another product that I didn't really go into that I'm a big fan of. that is a challenge. You also may want to see how compact your soils are. But over time, adding organic matter will actually help aerate it, so you'll have better infiltration. So that might be just the place you really need to focus on.
And you can see that Katie put in the website, bristleconecnps.org. Can you read Harriet's? Any way to deal with glyphosate contamination?
So that's Roundup. Okay. So luckily, Roundup glyphosate has pretty short shelf life. So, but I'm dealing with it on with some friends I'm helping out, and what we've done is we let it rest for a little bit, and then we're adding the compost tea to it, because the Roundup does kill soil microbes. Also, I think another, if you are in an area where you can get compost made from spent mushroom castings. I know there's a place in San Diego, but I don't know anywhere close by here that actually the fungi have actually shown certain fungi that will help speed up the process of restoring your soil after you have Roundup on it. So.
And I know there was a question beforehand that you kind of addressed. I don't know if you want to go into any more detail, how to keep wildlife out of compost. I mean, is there anything else?
Yeah, the biggest thing is you can cover it, and if you're using a mesh, the smaller the mesh you can, but the big thing about that is you still need to have air. So you probably, if you really have big issues, as I said, I have bears in my backyard, so I can't use anything. And if you're in I'd say a smaller mesh, or a lid on it, but you're really gonna have to be careful on how you keep it aerated. So that's my best answer. And I think Roberta had she asked me if I buy worm castings or mycobloom endo, how long is it good for? So the mycobloom, the mycorrhizal inoculum is good for 2 years, and there is an expiration date on the package. And then worm castings, about 2 years as well. I've used stuff that's a little bit older, but again, it becomes less biologically active. So usually at about a year is the best time. Within a year to use it is the best time.
Great. Any other questions? Julie, this has just been amazing. Thank you so much. You rock. It's just astounding. And every time I listen to you, I learn more and more. So thank you so much. And thank you for the compost tea that you gave me last year for my tomatoes. Marie, did you have anything you want to close up with?
Yeah, just a huge thank you to all of you for being here, and for Julie, and a lot of our partners that, like Katie, and I know we have Roberta on this call. So huge thank you to all of you. And I just wanted to share a little bit information about our next events that are coming up.
Let's remember to share how people can find
and that is on there too.
Okay, great.
So in 2 weeks, on July 2nd, our next workshop as a part of the virtual Victor Garden workshop is going to be Marvelous Monarchs, and it's going to be with special guest Michelle Hunt from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and she's going to share a little bit about how monarchs have been doing in the past few years and how you can make vital habitat in your backyard. And then on June 30th is our second meeting of our Happy Place Book Club, and we'll be discussing the second half of Rumwell Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass. So if anyone is interested in that, let me know, and we'd love to have you join us. The recordings of the workshops will be available on our website shortly, and I will be emailing the link to that out to everyone who's attended these workshops. So it should be up there soon, and I will make sure the link gets out to everyone.
Thank you, Marie. And we're still seeing if we can add more to this series, so we'll let you know. But for right now, hopefully we'll see you on the 2nd and again on the 30th. And thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you have a great rest of your day gardening.